My name is Isabella, and I am 26 years old. Last Christmas Eve changed everything I thought I knew about my family. What started as our traditional holiday dinner ended with my sister Scarlett losing her prestigious law firm partnership, my parents discovering a 15-year lie, and me finally understanding why I never felt like I belonged. The revenge was not mine, but watching karma serve justice at our mahogany dining table was the sweetest gift I have ever received in my entire life. Before we dive into this family drama that will leave you questioning everything you know about sibling loyalty, let me ask you something. Where are you watching this from right now? Are you cozy at home, maybe avoiding your own family drama? Hit that like button if you have ever dealt with a toxic family member, and do not forget to subscribe because this story has more twists than a holiday light string. Trust me, you will want to hear how this Christmas dinner became the most savage takedown in family history. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, I always lived in Scarlett's shadow. She was 3 years older, valedictorian of her high school class, and according to our parents, absolutely perfect in every conceivable way. While I struggled with dyslexia and barely maintained a 3.2 GPA, Scarlett effortlessly sailed through Harvard Law School and landed a position at Morrison, Reed and Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in Manhattan. Our parents, Margaret and Robert, never missed an opportunity to remind me of Scarlett's achievements. During family gatherings, conversations inevitably centered around her latest courtroom victory or her recent promotion. Meanwhile, my career as a freelance graphic designer was dismissed as a hobby rather than a legitimate profession. The comparison was constant and suffocating. Scarlett seemed to relish her golden child status. She would arrive at family events in designer clothes, driving luxury cars that cost more than my annual income. Her condescending attitude toward me had evolved from childhood teasing into calculated emotional manipulation. She had a particular talent for making cutting remarks disguised as sisterly concern, often questioning my life choices in front of our extended family. The dynamic became even more strained when I started dating Marcus 2 years ago. Marcus worked as an investigative journalist for a major newspaper, specializing in corporate fraud and white-collar crime. He was intelligent, compassionate, and treated me with respect I had never experienced from my family. However, Scarlett immediately viewed him as a threat to her carefully constructed narrative about my inadequacies. During previous family dinners, Scarlett would make subtle digs about Marcus's profession, suggesting that journalism was a dying field with no financial security. She would comment on his modest car or his off-the-rack clothing, always with a sweet smile that fooled our parents, but revealed her true intentions to me. Marcus, being the gentleman he was, never responded to her provocations, which only seemed to encourage her behavior. The tension reached a breaking point during Thanksgiving when Scarlett announced her engagement to Bradley Worthington III, heir to a pharmaceutical fortune. The announcement dominated the entire evening, with our parents fawning over her massive diamond ring and discussing wedding venues that cost more than most people's houses. I felt invisible, sitting quietly while my family planned Scarlett's fairy tale wedding. That night, Marcus noticed my distress and gently suggested that perhaps my family's treatment of me was not normal or healthy. He pointed out patterns of favoritism and emotional neglect that I had normalized over the years. His observations were painful but accurate, and for the first time, I began to question whether the problem was truly with me or with my family's dysfunctional dynamics. As Christmas approached, I debated whether to attend our traditional Christmas Eve dinner. The thought of enduring another evening of Scarlett's superiority complex and our parents' obvious favoritism felt overwhelming. However, Marcus encouraged me to go, suggesting that facing difficult family situations was part of building resilience and self-respect. The weeks leading up to Christmas were filled with Scarlett's usual passive-aggressive behavior. She would call our parents with updates about her wedding planning, always when she knew I was visiting. She made sure to mention how Bradley had bought her a new Mercedes as an early Christmas gift, or how they were considering a destination wedding in Italy that would cost more than most people's annual salaries. During one particularly memorable phone conversation, which took place while I was helping our mother prepare dinner, Scarlett loudly discussed her recent courtroom victory against a small nonprofit organization. She described how she had destroyed their case and secured a massive settlement for her corporate client, speaking about the opposing lawyers with contempt and derision. Our mother listened with obvious pride, praising Scarlett's ruthlessness as if it were a virtue. I noticed Marcus listening carefully to these conversations whenever he was present. His journalistic instincts seemed activated by something, though he never shared his thoughts with me directly. He would ask casual questions about Scarlett's cases or her law firm, displaying what seemed like professional curiosity rather than personal interest. The week before Christmas, Scarlett called to inform us that she would be bringing Bradley to dinner, along with some exciting news about her career. She hinted at a major promotion that would make her the youngest partner in her firm's history. Our parents were ecstatic, already planning how to share this achievement with their social circle. I felt my usual mixture of resignation and resentment. Another family gathering would become another celebration of Scarlett's perfection while I remained the disappointing daughter who had failed to live up to her potential. The familiar knot in my stomach tightened as I anticipated the evening of subtle humiliation and overt favoritism that awaited me. Marcus seemed unusually quiet during the days leading up to Christmas Eve. He spent long hours on his laptop, claiming to be working on a year-end article for his newspaper. However, I noticed him making several phone calls in private, speaking in hushed tones that suggested serious professional business rather than casual holiday preparations. On Christmas Eve morning, as I was getting dressed for dinner, Marcus approached me with an unusual intensity in his eyes. He took my hands and told me that he loved me, regardless of what happened that evening. His words seemed oddly prophetic, as if he knew something significant was about to occur. When I asked him what he meant, he simply smiled and said that sometimes the truth has a way of revealing itself when people least expect it. As we drove to my parents' house that evening, I had no idea that this Christmas Eve would become the night that changed everything. The carefully constructed lies that had shaped my family's dynamic for over a decade were about to crumble, and the sister who had spent years making me feel worthless was about to face consequences she never saw coming. The stage was set for a revelation that would expose not just Scarlett's professional misconduct, but the deeper betrayals that had poisoned our family relationships for years. The familiar scent of pine and cinnamon filled my childhood home as Marcus and I arrived for Christmas Eve dinner. Our parents had decorated the house with their usual elaborate holiday display, complete with multiple Christmas trees and enough twinkling lights to power a small village. Everything looked picture-perfect, just like the family image they had spent decades cultivating. Scarlett and Bradley arrived fashionably late, making their entrance with the calculated drama of celebrities attending a red carpet event. Scarlett wore a stunning red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, while Bradley sported a custom-tailored suit that screamed old money and privilege. They moved through the house like royalty, accepting hugs and compliments with practiced grace. During cocktails in the living room, the conversation immediately centered on Scarlett's recent professional achievements. She regaled us with stories about her latest cases, describing her courtroom strategies with obvious pride and satisfaction. Our parents hung on every word, asking detailed questions about her legal maneuvers and celebrating her victories as if they were their own personal triumphs. Bradley contributed his own stories about his family's pharmaceutical business, casually mentioning million-dollar deals and international expansion plans. The two of them formed a power couple that seemed designed to make everyone else in the room feel inadequate and unsuccessful. Their conversation was peppered with references to expensive vacations, exclusive social events, and influential people who moved in their elite circles. I noticed Marcus listening intently to these stories, though his expression remained carefully neutral. As an investigative journalist, he had developed the skill of appearing engaged while mentally cataloging information for future reference. His questions seemed casual and conversational, but I recognized the methodical way he was gathering details about Scarlett's work and Bradley's business connections. During dinner preparation, while the women helped in the kitchen and the men talked in the living room, Scarlett took the opportunity to deliver her usual subtle attacks on my life choices. She commented on my simple black dress, suggesting that I should invest in better clothing if I wanted to advance my career. She questioned Marcus's earning potential, wondering aloud how he could support a family on a journalist's salary. Her remarks were delivered with a sweet smile and a tone that could be interpreted as sisterly concern, making it difficult for me to respond without appearing defensive or ungrateful. Our mother either failed to notice the underlying cruelty or chose to ignore it, focusing instead on preparing the elaborate meal that would showcase our family's holiday traditions. When we finally sat down for dinner, our father proposed a toast to family and success, specifically highlighting Scarlett's achievements over the past year. She graciously accepted the praise, then announced that she had exciting news to share about her career advancement. The promotion she had hinted at was even more significant than our parents had imagined. Scarlett explained that she was being considered for senior partner at Morrison, Reed and Associates, a position that would make her one of the most powerful lawyers in Manhattan. The partnership vote was scheduled for early January, and she was confident about the outcome based on her recent string of high-profile victories. Our parents were practically glowing with pride, already planning how to share this news with their friends and colleagues. As Scarlett described the cases that had secured her promotion, I noticed Marcus's attention sharpen significantly. She mentioned several corporate clients and the legal strategies she had employed to protect their interests. Her tone suggested complete confidence in the righteousness of her actions, even when describing tactics that seemed ethically questionable to my untrained ear. One case in particular seemed to capture Marcus's interest. Scarlett described how she had successfully defended a pharmaceutical company against a class action lawsuit filed by families claiming their children had been harmed by a contaminated medication. She had managed to get the case dismissed on technical grounds, preventing the families from receiving compensation for their medical expenses and suffering. Bradley beamed with obvious pride as Scarlett recounted this victory, mentioning that his own family's company had faced similar lawsuits in the past. The casual way they discussed ruining families who had already suffered tragedy was chilling, revealing a level of callousness that made my stomach turn. Yet our parents continued to nod approvingly, treating their daughter's ruthlessness as a sign of professional competence. Throughout the meal, Marcus maintained his role as the polite boyfriend, asking appropriate questions and making supportive comments. However, I could sense an underlying tension in his demeanor, as if he were struggling to contain some powerful emotion. His journalist training was evident in the way he steered conversations towards specific topics, gathering information while appearing merely interested in getting to know my family better. The conversation eventually turned to future plans and holiday traditions. Scarlett announced that she and Bradley would be spending New Year's Eve at an exclusive resort in the Caribbean, celebrating both her promotion and their engagement. She made sure to mention the cost of their accommodations and the exclusive guest list, painting a picture of luxury that was clearly intended to highlight the contrast with my more modest lifestyle. Our parents expressed their excitement about having such successful children, though their comments made it clear that success was measured purely in financial terms. They discussed Scarlett's achievements with genuine pride while treating my graphic design career as a temporary phase that I would eventually outgrow. The familiar sting of being the disappointment in the family was particularly sharp during this holiday gathering. As dessert was served, Scarlett seemed to be building towards something significant. She had been dropping hints throughout the evening about a special announcement that would make this Christmas Eve particularly memorable. Our parents were practically vibrating with anticipation, clearly expecting another professional triumph to celebrate. Marcus excused himself briefly to check his phone, claiming he needed to respond to a work-related message. When he returned to the table, there was something different about his demeanor. He seemed more focused, more alert, as if he had received information that had clarified something important for him. The stage was set for what should have been another evening celebrating Scarlett's perfection while reinforcing my position as the family disappointment. Our parents were ready to shower her with praise and attention. Bradley was prepared to support his fiancée's moment of triumph, and I was resigned to enduring another evening of subtle humiliation and overt favoritism. However, something had shifted in the atmosphere around our dining table. Marcus's quiet observations throughout the evening had been building towards something significant, and the information he had been gathering was about to transform our family Christmas Eve dinner into something none of us had anticipated. The perfect facade that Scarlett had spent years constructing was about to face its most serious challenge, and the consequences would extend far beyond our holiday celebration. As we finished our main course and our mother began clearing plates for dessert, Scarlett leaned back in her chair with the satisfied expression of someone who had been saving the best for last. The candlelight flickered across her face, highlighting the calculated smile that I had learned to fear throughout our childhood. She was preparing to deliver what she clearly believed would be the evening's crowning moment. Scarlett cleared her throat delicately, drawing everyone's attention to her end of the table. Our parents immediately focused on her with the eager anticipation they always displayed when their golden child prepared to speak. Bradley reached over to squeeze her hand supportively, his expression suggesting he was already aware of whatever announcement she planned to make. The atmosphere in the dining room felt charged with expectation. Our father set down his wine glass and leaned forward slightly, while our mother paused in her plate clearing to give Scarlett her undivided attention. Even Marcus seemed to be waiting, though his expression was more watchful than anticipatory, like a predator observing its prey before striking. Scarlett began by expressing her gratitude for our family's support throughout her career, speaking in the polished tone she had perfected during years of courtroom presentations. She mentioned how blessed she felt to have achieved so much success at such a young age, and how excited she was about the opportunities that lay ahead. Her words were carefully chosen, building toward something significant while maintaining the suspense. Then she shifted her focus to me, and I felt my stomach drop as I recognized the familiar pattern of her verbal attacks. She spoke about how important family loyalty was to her, and how much she valued having a sister who supported her achievements even when her own life was less successful. The backhanded compliment hit its mark, making me feel small and inadequate while appearing generous and loving to our parents. Scarlett continued by discussing the importance of making good life choices and surrounding oneself with people who shared similar values and ambitions. Her eyes flickered meaningfully toward Marcus as she spoke, making it clear that her comments were directed at my relationship choices. She mentioned how crucial it was for successful people to marry within their social and professional circles, ensuring compatibility and mutual understanding. Our parents nodded along approvingly, clearly agreeing with their daughter's wisdom about relationships and social status. They had never been particularly welcoming toward Marcus, viewing his modest background and journalism career as signs that he was not suitable for their daughter. Scarlett was simply voicing the concerns they had been too polite to express directly. The conversation took a more pointed turn when Scarlett began discussing the differences between people who created value in society versus those who simply criticized from the sidelines. Her commentary on journalism as a profession that contributed nothing meaningful to the world was delivered with surgical precision, designed to humiliate Marcus while maintaining plausible deniability about her intentions. She described how lawyers like herself actually solved problems and created positive outcomes for their clients, while journalists spent their time looking for scandals and trying to tear down successful people. The comparison was obviously intended to highlight the contrast between her prestigious career and Marcus's supposedly parasitic profession. Our parents chuckled appreciatively, enjoying their daughter's clever wordplay. Marcus remained completely calm throughout this verbal assault, his expression never changing despite the increasingly personal nature of Scarlett's attacks. His composure seemed to irritate her, as if she had expected a more dramatic reaction to her carefully crafted insults. She escalated her rhetoric, suggesting that some people were content to live mediocre lives while others were destined for greatness. The final blow came when Scarlett announced her intention to help me find a more suitable boyfriend, someone who could provide the stability and success that I deserved. She mentioned several eligible bachelors from her social circle, all of whom were wealthy professionals who could elevate my status and provide the security that Marcus obviously could not offer. The suggestion was presented as sisterly generosity, though the underlying message was clear. Our parents seemed delighted by this proposal, immediately beginning to discuss the various candidates Scarlett had in mind. They spoke about me as if I were not present, debating my prospects for landing a successful husband and expressing their concerns about my current relationship choices. The conversation was deeply humiliating, reducing me to a project that needed their intervention and guidance. Throughout this entire exchange, Marcus continued to maintain his calm demeanor, though I noticed his hand had moved to rest on his phone, which lay beside his plate on the table. His fingers seemed to be moving slightly, as if he were typing or scrolling through something important. The movement was subtle enough that no one else seemed to notice, but it suggested he was preparing for something significant. When Scarlett finally finished her humiliating monologue, there was a moment of expectant silence around the table. Our parents were clearly waiting for my response, probably expecting me to thank my sister for her concern and accept her generous offer to improve my life. Bradley was smiling approvingly at his fiancée's performance, obviously proud of her ability to manipulate the situation so skillfully. Instead of responding to Scarlett directly, Marcus cleared his throat and asked if he could share something interesting he had discovered while researching a story for his newspaper. His tone was conversational and pleasant, giving no indication of the bombshell he was about to drop on our family dinner. He mentioned that his current investigation involved corporate fraud in the pharmaceutical industry, which immediately captured Bradley's attention. Marcus explained that his research had uncovered a fascinating case involving a law firm that had been helping pharmaceutical companies cover up safety issues with their medications. The firm had been using various legal tactics to prevent injured families from receiving compensation, even when the companies knew their products were dangerous. His description was clinical and professional, but the implications were becoming increasingly clear. Our parents listened with polite interest, unaware that Marcus was describing cases that directly involved their daughter's law firm. Scarlett's expression began to change as she recognized the specific details Marcus was sharing, her confident smile gradually fading into something closer to concern. Bradley shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly understanding the relevance of this information to his own family's business. Marcus continued his explanation with the methodical precision of an experienced investigative journalist. He described how the law firm had been systematically destroying evidence, bribing officials, and intimidating witnesses to protect their pharmaceutical clients. The pattern of corruption was extensive and well-documented, involving multiple cases over several years that had resulted in preventable deaths and suffering. The atmosphere around our dinner table had completely transformed. What began as Scarlett's moment of triumph was rapidly becoming something much more serious and threatening. Our parents were still trying to process the information Marcus was sharing, not yet understanding its connection to their daughter's career. However, Scarlett and Bradley clearly recognized the danger they were facing. As Marcus reached the climax of his explanation, he made the connection explicit by naming Morrison, Reed and Associates as the law firm at the center of his investigation. The color drained from Scarlett's face as she realized that her attempts to humiliate me had triggered a response that would destroy everything she had worked to achieve. The perfect Christmas Eve dinner was about to become the night that ended her career and exposed the corruption that had funded her success. The moment hung suspended in the candlelit dining room, with the weight of Marcus's revelation settling over our family like a heavy blanket. Our parents were beginning to understand the implications of what they had just heard, while Scarlett and Bradley were calculating their options for damage control. The tables had turned completely, and the evening was about to take a dramatic turn that none of them had anticipated. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a manila folder that I had not noticed him carrying into the house. The simple gesture sent a chill through the room as everyone realized this was not a casual conversation about his work, but something far more deliberate and prepared. He placed the folder on the table next to his plate, his movements calm and methodical despite the obvious tension radiating from Scarlett and Bradley. The folder contained printed documents, photographs, and what appeared to be official correspondence bearing the letterhead of various government agencies. Marcus explained that his investigation had taken him deep into the world of pharmaceutical corruption, where he had discovered a network of lawyers, executives, and regulatory officials working together to suppress evidence of dangerous drug side effects. Scarlett tried to interrupt, claiming that Marcus was obviously confused about the details of her cases and suggesting that he had misunderstood the complex legal strategies involved in pharmaceutical defense. Her voice carried a slight tremor that betrayed her growing panic, though she was still attempting to maintain her professional composure and superior attitude. Marcus calmly corrected her, providing specific case numbers, dates, and dollar amounts that made it clear his information was not based on speculation or misunderstanding. He had obtained internal communications from Morrison, Reed and Associates through whistleblowers within the firm who had grown uncomfortable with the unethical practices they were being asked to perform. The most damaging evidence involved a case that Scarlett had described earlier in the evening as one of her greatest victories. Marcus revealed that the pharmaceutical company she had defended was Bradley's family business, and that the contaminated medication had caused permanent neurological damage in over 200 children. The families had been prevented from seeking justice because of legal maneuvers that Scarlett had personally orchestrated. Bradley attempted to defend his family's company, claiming that all pharmaceutical products carried inherent risks and that their legal strategies were standard industry practice. His argument fell apart when Marcus produced internal emails showing that company executives had known about the contamination for months before taking any action to protect consumers. Our parents sat in stunned silence as Marcus methodically destroyed the narrative they had believed about their daughter's successful career. Every victory Scarlett had celebrated was revealed to be a case where she had helped powerful corporations avoid accountability for harming innocent people. The legal strategies they had admired were actually sophisticated methods of obstructing justice and denying compensation to victims. The most shocking revelation came when Marcus explained that several of the pharmaceutical executives involved in these cover-ups had been secretly recorded discussing their strategies. The recordings included conversations with lawyers from Morrison, Reed and Associates, including Scarlett herself, where they laughed about manipulating grief-stricken families and referred to injured children as acceptable collateral damage in their profit-driven business model. Scarlett's composed facade finally cracked as she realized the extent of the evidence Marcus had compiled against her. She accused him of conducting an illegal investigation and threatened to sue him for defamation, but her threats rang hollow when he calmly explained that everything he had discovered would be published in a major newspaper exposed the following week. The timing of the publication had been carefully planned to coincide with the partnership vote at Morrison, Reed and Associates. Marcus explained that the newspaper's legal team had already reviewed all the evidence and confirmed its accuracy, while law enforcement agencies had been provided with copies of the most incriminating documents. The investigation was beyond Scarlett's ability to stop or control. Bradley's attempt to salvage the situation by offering Marcus financial incentives to suppress the story only made things worse. His bribery attempt was immediately recorded on Marcus's phone, providing additional evidence of the corrupt mindset that had driven their criminal behavior. The recording would become another piece of evidence in the growing case against their network. Our mother finally found her voice, asking Marcus why he had waited until Christmas Eve to reveal this information. His response was devastating in its simplicity. He had wanted our family to understand exactly who Scarlett really was before they continued celebrating her supposed achievements. The holiday dinner had provided the perfect opportunity to expose her true character. Marcus explained that he had been investigating pharmaceutical corruption for months before he met me, but discovering Scarlett's involvement had given his story a personal dimension that made it even more compelling. He had spent our entire relationship gathering evidence while watching her treat me with contempt and cruelty, knowing that justice was coming for her eventually. The folder contained one final surprise, documentation showing that Scarlett's promotion to senior partner was contingent on her ability to maintain the pharmaceutical clients that generated the most revenue for the firm. Her entire career advancement was built on her willingness to help companies cover up their crimes, making her complicit in a system that prioritized profits over human lives. As the full scope of Marcus's investigation became clear, our family Christmas Eve dinner transformed into something resembling a courtroom where Scarlett was the defendant facing overwhelming evidence of her guilt. Our parents struggled to reconcile the daughter they had celebrated with the corrupt lawyer who had been exposed before their eyes. The most painful moment came when our father asked Scarlett directly whether the accusations were true. Her inability to provide a convincing denial, combined with her obvious panic and desperate attempts to discredit Marcus's evidence, served as confirmation of her guilt. The golden child who had been the pride of our family was revealed to be a criminal who had built her success on the suffering of innocent victims. Bradley's attempts to minimize the situation by claiming that corporate law always involved ethical gray areas only made things worse. Marcus produced evidence showing that their actions went far beyond normal legal advocacy into territory that qualified as criminal conspiracy and obstruction of justice. The dinner table that had been set for a celebration of family success became the scene of a complete moral reckoning. The careful facade that Scarlett had maintained throughout her career was stripped away, revealing the callous opportunist who had been hiding beneath the surface. Her attempts to humiliate me earlier in the evening now seemed pathetically ironic given the destruction of her own reputation. As Marcus finished presenting his evidence, the silence in the dining room was deafening. Our parents were processing the reality that their perfect daughter was facing potential criminal charges, while Scarlett and Bradley were calculating their legal options in a situation where they had been thoroughly outmaneuvered by someone they had dismissed as irrelevant. The Christmas Eve dinner that was supposed to showcase Scarlett's superiority had become the night that exposed her corruption and destroyed the career she had spent years building. The justice that Marcus had delivered was swift, comprehensive, and absolutely devastating in its effectiveness. The silence that followed Marcus's revelation lasted for what felt like an eternity. Our elegant dining room, with its gleaming silverware and flickering candles, had transformed into the scene of a devastating expose that would have far-reaching consequences for everyone present. The carefully arranged Christmas decorations seemed almost mockingly cheerful given the gravity of what had just been revealed. Scarlett was the first to break the silence, her voice shaking with a combination of rage and desperation as she demanded to know how Marcus had obtained confidential information about her cases. She accused him of conducting industrial espionage and threatened to report him to law enforcement agencies, apparently forgetting that those same agencies were already investigating her firm based on the evidence he had provided. Bradley attempted to support his fiancée by questioning the legitimacy of Marcus's sources and suggesting that disgruntled employees often fabricate allegations against successful companies. His defense crumbled when Marcus calmly explained that multiple independent sources had provided corroborating evidence and that several former Morrison, Reed and Associates employees had already agreed to testify in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Our parents sat frozen in their chairs, struggling to process the complete destruction of everything they thought they knew about their daughter's career. Our father kept asking for clarification about specific details, as if hoping to find some explanation that would minimize Scarlett's involvement in the corruption Marcus had described. Our mother appeared to be in shock, staring at her daughter with an expression of complete bewilderment. The most devastating moment came when Marcus produced a recording device and played excerpts from conversations between Scarlett and pharmaceutical executives. Her voice was clearly audible as she discussed strategies for discrediting expert witnesses and suppressing medical evidence that could have saved lives. The callous tone she used when referring to injured children was particularly shocking to our parents, who had raised her to value compassion and integrity. Scarlett's desperate attempts to explain away the recordings only made her situation worse. She claimed that the conversations had been taken out of context and that aggressive advocacy was expected in high-stakes litigation. However, her explanations could not account for the obvious pleasure she took in describing how she had manipulated grieving families and prevented them from obtaining justice for their suffering. Bradley's phone began ringing continuously as news of the investigation apparently spread through their professional network. Each call seemed to bring worse news, as colleagues and business associates distanced themselves from the scandal that was beginning to engulf their careers. His attempts to salvage their reputations through damage control were clearly failing as the scope of the evidence against them became apparent. Our mother finally found her voice to ask the question that was haunting all of us: how many children had been harmed because of Scarlett's actions? Marcus's response was devastating in its precision. He had documented over 300 cases where pharmaceutical companies had avoided accountability through legal strategies that Scarlett had developed or implemented, resulting in preventable deaths, permanent disabilities, and untreated medical conditions. The financial dimension of the corruption was equally shocking. Marcus revealed that Scarlett's annual bonuses were directly tied to her success in suppressing pharmaceutical lawsuits, creating a financial incentive for her to obstruct justice regardless of the human cost. Her luxurious lifestyle had been funded by blood money extracted from the suffering of innocent families. As the evening progressed, it became clear that Scarlett's legal troubles were just beginning. Marcus explained that federal prosecutors were preparing criminal charges related to conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and racketeering. The evidence was so comprehensive that plea negotiations would likely be her only option for avoiding a lengthy prison sentence. Bradley's situation was equally dire, as his family's pharmaceutical company was facing both criminal prosecution and massive civil liability. The cover-up that Scarlett had helped orchestrate would ultimately cost them hundreds of millions of dollars in settlements and fines, assuming they could avoid complete bankruptcy. His engagement to Scarlett now seemed like a liability rather than an asset. Our parents were forced to confront the reality that their golden child was not only a criminal, but had built her entire career on causing harm to vulnerable people. The pride they had felt in her achievements was replaced by shame and horror as they understood the true nature of her professional success. The contrast between their expectations and reality was devastating. The most painful revelation came when Marcus explained that several of Scarlett's victims had been children from families similar to ours. The pharmaceutical companies she had defended had knowingly sold contaminated medications to middle-class families who trusted that the products had been properly tested and regulated. Her actions had essentially betrayed people who shared her own background and values. Scarlett's attempts to blame her firm's senior partners for pressuring her into unethical behavior were undermined by evidence showing that she had enthusiastically embraced the corruption and even proposed new strategies for avoiding accountability. She had not been a reluctant participant, but an active architect of the criminal conspiracy that was now destroying her life. As midnight approached on Christmas Eve, our family dinner had completely devolved into chaos. Scarlett was frantically calling lawyers while Bradley attempted to coordinate damage control with his family's crisis management team. Our parents sat in stunned silence, occasionally asking questions that revealed their complete inability to comprehend how their daughter had become involved in such serious criminal activity. The irony of the situation was not lost on anyone present. Scarlett had spent the evening attempting to humiliate me for my modest lifestyle and relationship choices, only to have her own moral bankruptcy exposed in devastating detail. The sister who had always positioned herself as superior was revealed to be morally inferior in the most profound way possible. Marcus maintained his professional demeanor throughout the chaos, answering questions and providing additional details as requested. His investigation had been thorough and methodical, leaving no room for doubt about the accuracy of his findings. The evidence he had compiled would ensure that justice was served regardless of Scarlett's wealth, connections, or legal expertise. The Christmas Eve dinner that was supposed to celebrate family success had become a reckoning that would haunt our family for years to come. The perfect facade that Scarlett had maintained was permanently shattered, and the consequences of her actions would extend far beyond her own career. The golden child had fallen, and the impact of her corruption would reshape our family dynamics forever. As the evening drew to a close, it was clear that our family would never be the same. The truth that Marcus had revealed could not be undone, and the justice that was coming for Scarlett could not be stopped. 3 months after that unforgettable Christmas Eve dinner, I sat in my newly renovated home office, surrounded by the fruits of my expanding graphic design business. The events of that night had changed everything, not just for Scarlett, but for our entire family dynamic. The truth had a way of reshaping relationships in ways that none of us could have anticipated. Scarlett's career had collapsed exactly as Marcus had predicted. The newspaper expose was published 2 days after Christmas, triggering a federal investigation that resulted in criminal charges against her and 14 other lawyers at Morrison, Reed and Associates. Her partnership vote was canceled, her employment was terminated, and her legal license was suspended pending the outcome of her criminal trial. The golden child had lost everything she had worked to achieve. Bradley's family pharmaceutical company faced over $2 billion in civil lawsuits and criminal fines. Their engagement was quietly terminated as both families attempted to distance themselves from the scandal. The power couple who had seemed invincible just months earlier were now facing separate legal battles that would likely consume years of their lives and most of their financial resources. The most surprising transformation occurred in my relationship with our parents. The shock of discovering Scarlett's true character had forced them to reevaluate their assumptions about success, family values, and what truly mattered in life. They slowly began to understand how their favoritism had enabled Scarlett's moral corruption while dismissing my genuine accomplishments and character. Our father called me 3 weeks after Christmas to apologize for years of treating me as the disappointing daughter. He admitted that he had been so impressed by Scarlett's financial success that he had failed to consider the ethical implications of her career choices. His apology was awkward but sincere, marking the beginning of a slow process of rebuilding our relationship on more honest foundations. Our mother struggled more with accepting the new reality, initially trying to find ways to excuse or minimize Scarlett's actions. However, as the evidence continued to mount and more victims came forward to share their stories, she was forced to confront the extent of the harm her favored daughter had caused. Her grief over losing the daughter she thought she knew was genuine and heartbreaking. Marcus's investigation won several prestigious journalism awards and led to significant reforms in pharmaceutical regulation. His work exposed a network of corruption that extended far beyond our family's personal drama, resulting in new laws designed to protect consumers from corporate cover-ups. The story that began with defending me from family humiliation had evolved into a crusade for justice that would help countless future victims. My graphic design business experienced unexpected growth as clients were drawn to work with someone who had been featured in such a prominent investigative piece. The publicity had initially been overwhelming, but it ultimately opened doors that I never could have accessed through traditional networking. My modest career was flourishing in ways that Scarlett's prestigious law practice never had. The most profound change was in my understanding of family loyalty and self-worth. Years of accepting Scarlett's treatment had convinced me that I was somehow deficient or disappointing compared to her achievements. Marcus's willingness to risk his own safety to expose her corruption had shown me what real loyalty looked like and how love should protect rather than enable harmful behavior. 6 months after that Christmas Eve dinner, Marcus and I moved in together, creating the kind of supportive partnership that I had never experienced before. His integrity and courage during the investigation had deepened my respect for him, while his gentle handling of my family's trauma had demonstrated his genuine care for my well-being. We were building something authentic and healthy together. Scarlett eventually pleaded guilty to conspiracy and obstruction of justice charges, receiving a 5-year prison sentence and permanent disbarment. Her allocution in court included an apology that seemed genuine, though it was impossible to know whether she truly understood the harm she had caused or was simply attempting to minimize her punishment. The sister I had known was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. The most unexpected development came when several of Scarlett's victims contacted me after reading about our family's story. They wanted to thank Marcus for his courage in exposing the corruption, but they also wanted to share how his investigation had finally given them hope for justice. Meeting these families helped me understand the true significance of what had happened at our dinner table. Our family's Christmas traditions evolved to reflect our new understanding of what really mattered. Instead of celebrating financial achievements and social status, we began focusing on kindness, integrity, and service to others. The conversations around our dinner table became more honest and meaningful, even though they were often more difficult than our previous superficial celebrations. I started volunteering with organizations that helped families affected by pharmaceutical injuries, using my graphic design skills to create materials that educated consumers about their rights. The work was deeply satisfying in ways that my previous commercial projects had never been, giving me a sense of purpose that wealth and status could never provide. Marcus continued his investigative work, specializing in corporate accountability stories that gave voice to victims of institutional corruption. His reputation for thorough, ethical journalism opened opportunities at major publications, though he remained committed to stories that served the public interest rather than pursuing fame or financial gain. His integrity was uncompromising and inspiring. The house where that Christmas Eve dinner took place was eventually sold, as our parents could no longer bear the memories associated with the space where their family's illusions had been shattered. They moved to a smaller home and began volunteering with charitable organizations, perhaps seeking redemption for their years of celebrating success without questioning its moral foundations. As I reflect on that transformative Christmas Eve dinner, I realize that justice sometimes comes in unexpected forms. Scarlett had intended to humiliate me in front of our family, but her cruelty had triggered a response that exposed her own moral bankruptcy. The revenge was not something I had planned or executed, but karma had found its way to our dinner table nonetheless. The experience taught me that real success is measured not by wealth or status, but by the courage to do what is right even when it is difficult. Marcus had risked his career and safety to expose corruption that was harming innocent people, while Scarlett had sacrificed her integrity for money and prestige. The contrast between their choices revealed everything I needed to know about character and values. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's attempt to humiliate you backfired spectacularly? Have you seen karma serve justice in ways that seemed almost too perfect to be real? Share your stories in the comments below, because I love hearing about moments when truth finally prevails over deception. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice served and lessons learned. Share this with someone who needs to hear that toxic family members eventually face consequences for their actions. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of the most painful yet transformative experiences of my life. Remember that sometimes the greatest gift we can receive is the truth, even when it shatters everything we thought we knew about the people closest to us. Until next time, stay strong and trust that justice has a way of finding its mark.